Welcome to the Delighted Customers Podcast. I am so glad you're here. We challenge conventional thinking about customer experience because I believe that improving experiences isn't just good for business, it's a powerful way to make a meaningful difference in people's lives. Each week, we feature thought-provoking conversations with industry thought leaders from a variety of backgrounds, offering unique perspectives and actionable insights. Get ready to sharpen your leadership and transform your approach to customer experience. Let's dive in. Well, welcome to this episode of the Delighted Customers Podcast. I am thrilled to have back on the show a returning guest, Ania Rodriguez, who is a self-made entrepreneur and made her name for herself serving as a CX and UX advisor to Fortune 500 companies around the world, from Google to Cisco to Amazon, Meta, Disney, and many others. And she did so getting double-digit growth for her first company, Key Lime Interactive, over the past decade. And that company has emerged to become one of the leading user experience research firms in the United States. Now she heads up Journey Track, which is a journey tracking tool, really what I call a journey management tool that combines the use of artificial intelligence with the most business impactful processes and capabilities that you'd want to have. And today, first, before we get into what we're going to talk about today, and Ania, let me welcome you to the show.
Thank you, Mark. It's great to be back. Thank you so much for having me again here.
And such an honor. And Ania and her company Journey Track are sponsors of the Delighted Customers Podcast, and we're just incredibly excited about that partnership. So welcome back, and today we're going to be taking a little different view through a different lens of how leaders can make effective change in organizations by looking through the lens of celebrities, and how important it is to be able to identify the fact that those key stakeholders that we need to make an impact on, to influence for change, the kind of support that we need to garner as CX leaders, all have different interests. By looking at this through a different lens, the lens of some of these celebrities, you would have heard of all of them, we're going to hopefully give some fresh insights, whether you're a CX leader or any other kind of leader, on how you can make change. Am I on the right track, Ania?
You're right on track, yes. Thank you, Mark.
Okay, well, you are most welcome. Let's dig into this, and we're calling it loosely From Oprah to Branson: 5 Celebrity Archetypes Every CX Leader Needs. So let's start off as, why is it such a big deal to maybe take a different approach that will give us more impact with executives? Why should the C-suite even care?
Yeah, what I see, and having been working in this field for over 2 decades, is that CX leaders are often misunderstood or underutilized by the C-suite. They're expected to fix things, but not empowered to really drive strategic change. So these 5 architects remind experienced people in general to really think about and shift and reframe how they present themselves to the leadership. Everybody talks about getting a seat at the table, but what does that really mean? And I think each of the archetypes, Oprah, Lady Gaga, Branson, Mark Cuban, and Taylor Swift, have their own way of doing it. And they've all been super successful. Oprah starts with intention. Gaga is really about breaking mold. Branson is about building unforgettable, experiences. Cuban is about really making it undeniable for your CFO, and then Taylor is really storytelling. Each of them presents a different mindset, and I think why it's such a big deal. It can improve clarity and help those that are struggling. And I think the biggest component when people are trying to do customer experience transformations in general, I've seen this pattern over and over and over again, is that they don't really know how to create not necessarily buy-in, but alignment, right? In that case, it's a common mistake. Alignment is something that you do actively. Before I started these companies, I worked at IBM in their global services team, really helping senior leaders, helping them really think strategically and really move forward CX. And even at that young age, I learned that folks really got stuck in just knowing how to frame things and really inspiring folks to make that change. And so that's where it comes from.
So let's talk a little bit, double click on that to make sure we can level set for the audience. We talked about buy-in versus alignment. Could you define each one of those for us?
Yeah, to me, buy-in is something that's passive. Sure, do your CX thing, versus alignment is active. This is how my team contributes to the journey. So to me, there's like two different ways. Buy-in is something you passively do, and then alignment is something you actively do, and you're consistently showing contribution.
So the key then is, how do we get alignment? In practice, what are some common mistakes that you see CX leaders making when they're trying to influence people they need to come on board?
Yeah. I think when they're trying to influence, they are, I think that the classic things that people are sort of repeating over and over is still happening, right? They're still stuck in like visa customer metrics and talking about NPS or those things, even though no one wants to talk about it, are still happening today. Those are common mistakes that I still see. There's movement that I'm starting to see across a lot of the enterprises, but it's still there. There's still this desire to want to talk through revenue conversations, but people really don't even know how to start. They just revert to what they're accustomed to. I think one of the things that I see in general as common mistakes is that CX is really a team sport. If you solo it by yourself, you're going to sabotage it. If you think you're going to, I have a retailer customer that has been owning all the customer journeys within this big retailer, and she has a couple of people sort of dedicated to creating these maps in Figma, which is a prototyping tool, and she doesn't want to have others in other teams to basically build their own journeys, all the designers, which they should be doing that. But she wants to control it. She makes it a very much a siloed, it's my area of expertise. If you're doing this, if you're trying to really to build a to transform the company and really be driven from a customer centricity perspective, it no longer is owned by one person or one department. It's now owned by everybody, and it becomes part of that DNA. And I think that's a long ways for a lot of companies. Even though everybody wants to be there, there's just still one department who's owning it, and then they're consulting to other areas. And I think that's broken, personally.
I think you're hitting on a really good and important point, and I am guilty as charged. I was leading a CX practice at a bank in the Mid-Atlantic, and one of the mistakes I made, now I can look back and refer to it as part of what is in the training program I offer, is I fell into the hero's trap, and that was really trying to be the hero and do it all myself and not realize the importance of being a guide and how important it is to help others achieve the goals that they're trying to achieve, and to use, to your vernacular, alignment as aligning, if you're the customer's advocate, what the customers want, need, desire, with what they're trying to achieve. Does that make sense?
That totally does, yeah. I see the hero journey, as you call it, all the time. There's just everywhere. It's interesting, everything from like teams and enterprises to small little teams and even consultancies. There's this desire to just, perhaps because there's almost like a perception that there's still like a land grab situation. I think people are just very much like, this is my land and this is my land. There's a territorial thing that continues to happen for whatever reason, and I think that really breaks the ability for companies to really sort of align, and it really becomes customer centric, not align, but really establish or finally meet their whatever objectives from a centricity perspective. So it holds them back. For better or for worse, you can have tools, you can have people, but if you don't really have good change management, and that's part of why this was built, I think the strongest thing CX leaders need right now is to learn change management skills. Because I think that's probably the biggest blocker that I see, right? And I think part of why I created this, I was trying to help them get perspective, because oftentimes just thinking about how we all show up to work and how we show up in our life, we all have different archetypes, right, of what we are. I think the biggest thing that they need to understand is that everybody is their typical, buy-in blueprint, if you will, the C-suite. They're very clear of what they want, depending on who it is. But they have their own archetype. They might have, obviously your CFO is pretty much your Mark Cuban, something. Tell me the numbers. But there's people in that team that are really much about like making unforgettable experiences, like the Virgin brands. I think each company has their own way of doing it, but I think as leaders in CX, right, the biggest thing that people can do to really mature and shift the mindset of a company is really start working within, right, thinking through all the components around change management.
Tell us about how, say, for example, we can channel Taylor Swift to help us do our job.
Yeah. So Taylor is all about storytelling. She's the queen of that. If you think about using her lens to track your impact, you might think about how you stories behind your CX outcomes. So it's not just saying, like a Cuban would be like, show me the ROI or efficiency gains, but she's more about tell me the story behind that. Like I'm really double tapping on why and kind of pulling that out of. She's a phenomenal storyteller. That's what makes her amazing, I think, in my opinion anyways. Whereas a Lady Gaga, her lens would be a little bit more about like what bold move did you do that shifted customer emotion or behavior and things like that. She's all about that bold shift. Mm-hmm. And then Oprah, I love Oprah, but she's all about trust and really changes in trust and customer sentiment, really underlying that, right? Mm-hmm. And of course, Branson is like, will people remember this and share this? Like that he cares about that. Wow. If you take those, each architect sees value differently. As you think about impact, it's not just about, the impact itself, but, you have to measure the shifts in emotion. There's a lot of now new work that's coming around that double tapping into the emotional journeys. Many years ago, we actually had a public case study that I could talk about with Southwest Airlines. My other company, Keyline, worked on a bunch of projects with them to just really get to the underlying emotional journey, to really shift it. And I thought it was interesting. This is about pre-COVID, but it really shows an example of really getting to that shift to really kind of elicit a certain experience, and then measuring that through time and seeing the ROIs. It's interesting. We were able to shift and show some of those at the conference our customer presented at. But net is that as you're thinking through these initiatives, you have to think through these different lenses to basically make sure you're looking at it from different viewpoints, because there's going to for sure be different stances within your even company and leadership.
So I love what you're saying, Ania, about both understanding who it is that you need to make an impact on and influence and not treat everyone the same way, and also be aware of different styles that you may use to approach those people the way they respond best.
Yeah.
Right.
I think there's a lot. I found myself very lucky at a very young age. IBM sent me to a bunch of leadership training early on. They had some like leadership, 10 women leadership thing, and I still use a lot of those learnings, and I think that's what made me pretty successful at building both businesses. You want to create buy-in even before you get into that meeting. You want to have like alignment. You want to meet with someone who knows who you're. Let's just say that it's your CFO who is going to make this decision of whatever you need to get. Let's just get some software, whatever it is. If you're meeting with him or her, you're going to want to ensure that depending on their style, right, gets to know somebody who's already done it, right, before and got approval or is a influencer to this person, and kind of pre-show that information, right? Because what that does for you is it kind of gets you, hey, I'm meeting with Jane, and Jane is the CFO, and it's my first time doing it. Here's what I prepared. What do you think? And is close enough to that person will be like, oh no, she wants to see it XYZ, or she's really about numbers, or she's really about, maybe she's a little bit for Oprah. What changes of trust do we see? Is there something that now is a different sort of version of things? Depending on what, at the end, that person is, their style, if you will, it's that alignment to it. I found that either doing that or, if you're meeting with a greater group and that person is the decision maker, if somehow you can pick their brain for 15 minutes before so they don't just get like blindsided in the meeting, it's those types of little things that really I found to be super helpful as the years have gone by.
Struggling to connect the dots across your customer journeys? You're not alone. For many CX professionals, journey mapping is still manual and fragmented, especially in large organizations. JourneyTrack changes that. Their platform unifies journey mapping, management, and measurement in one place, giving you a real-time view of every touch point. uncover friction, align teams, and prove the ROI of your CX initiatives so you can make smarter decisions and deliver smoother journeys. Want to see how AI can help you map smarter, not harder? Download our free white paper at journeytrack.io/podcast or click the link at the end of the show notes to get started with AI-powered journey mapping in minutes. So Ania, let's play this out for our audience and make believe that we were able to use Journey Track to review a key customer journey, and we'll pick a business. Maybe we'll pick an amusement park, just for fun. And we're speaking to the head of CX for the amusement park. We have just now gotten the results back of using Journey Track and collaborating with a team of internal and customers to help collect the information that we have. And we're going to share those results, and of course you can make up whatever you want the results are. But I'm going to ask you to walk through each one of these people and ask what they might notice in the feedback and in the results of the tool that they might want to communicate with their C-suite in the meeting. So let's start with Oprah. What would Oprah approach it? What did she see in the data, and how might she approach it?
Yeah, she would start off with the intention. You know, everything comes from a place of purpose. So our purpose at Mark's Playground is to really have people have a lot of fun and learn a lot of things. So she would lead with the intention. How well did we meet that intention, that purpose? Did the parents who were there, did they feel that? Who's talking about it? That's how she would, I think, approach it. In the case of Gaga, she would be like, okay, we need to break these molds. You know, we need to stop blending in. Mark's Playground has to be like amazing, and it has to have a strong identity, and we really, we got to do like the, Nickelodeon used to have those, what was it? The green, oh my gosh. And Nickelodeon had those green things. There was like an obstacle course and kids used to run around. The point is, it was even, 30, 40 years later, whatever it is, yeah. I still remember, right? So it's about breaking those molds, doing something so wild and fun and crazy, and everybody's going to be like, oh my goodness, it's so much fun, right? That's what Gaga's going to do. We're so wild that it's like, you come up with some like robot, roller coaster that you ride at a roller coaster, and it's VR and this all this stuff, some crazy stuff. And that's really what she wants to go after. So she would lead with that. She would craft some identity that breaks the mold, breaks the typical mindset. Branson was, don't make it unforgettable. He's the guy that's gonna, don't be boring. We're gonna make this an amazing, people are gonna be so talking about us, and that's, we wanna make it wild and fun and just amazing, right? Let's just deliver once in a lifetime kind of moment that people are going to talk about it for months, and it's going to build a bunch of loyalty and brag-worthy brand equity. That's his play.
Mark Cuban,
he's going to go a little bit different. He's going to be very much about what kind of initiative does this support from a ROI perspective. Let's look at the numbers. Let's look at it. Does it make sense?
So we're looking at the journey map of this amusement park, and we notice that there's some bottlenecks on certain rides or on the concession stands. He's not happy with that.
Oh gosh, no, because that's going to cost him money, and that's money. Money is the most important thing for him. He wants to see the results and how we can reduce, that bottleneck of saying, what are we going to do from an operations management perspective to reduce that efficiency, because that means that people are less able to use their time to go buy more food at the food stand. So he cares about driving food stand sales. Right? I worked at a movie theater, and that was my first job. And it was not about buying the movies, it was about the food stand. The food stands are where people make money at these parks. So that's probably what he's thinking about, like, how do we drive more people to those food stands and get whatever Slurpee stands and ice cream stands.
What about Taylor Swift?
Taylor. She's creating a movement. She's all about how do I tell a story that's going to be there? How do I create a movement? How do I make it so that, let's talk about, I've been to her concert, 3 hours. What other, kind of folks do 3 hours? There's a level of like storytelling and movement and just making people feel like they're they're included and just are seen and heard, and there's some narrative. So like her thing is totally about narrative versus, Gaga boldness, Oprah purpose, Cuban impact, and Branson's all about memorability. So each of them so hers about narrative. She's going to try to connect that to that.
So how might I be able to use a tool like Journey Track? And I remember you sharing a case study of Paychecks using, not unlike a lot of other companies that have patched together old tools like Excel or Miro or Mural to manage the customer journey, try and track the customer journey. How can they better utilize a tool like Journey Track to help them with these 5 archetypes to do their job better?
Yeah. So if you're more like an Oprah, you're purposely driven, you care about research, and you care about making sure you build that purpose through research. We have an insights repository, an insights, hub, if you will. And not only can you just upload raw research and it basically creates themes and it tags it to journeys, and it also, for all intents and purposes, you can create journeys from a bunch of qualitative, quantitative, raw research, and then at least start you there. So Oprah, at least you can, you're going to get clarity through the data you have, and sort of that sort of builds not just journeys for the sake of journeys, but journeys that are research based. So if you're purpose-driven, you might care about that. Gaga, the journey maps, I think it's all about doing stuff that actually look good in the boardroom. She's caring about breaking that mold. If you're still doing sticky notes on a wall and you're still getting super frustrated because half the people on the call, if you're using Miro, can't figure out how to move the sticky, then our workshop feature is amazing. It allows you to run this and at a click of a button get done quickly, so then you can go and go back to Mark's playground. So it gets you stuff done in at least half the time, sometimes even depending how quickly things, it could be what used to take days and months now take, hours. The craziness of what's happening now with AI and some of the features we built in.
And Ania, let me double click on Lady Gaga here for a minute. She's using this tool and she has access with the click of a button, as you say, to all this data. Maybe, tell me if I'm way off base here, she can easily identify an opportunity that is a high emotion opportunity in the journey. Maybe it's when they first get there, or maybe in the case of Paychecks, when there's some major conversion at a company and the risk is incredibly high and everybody's worried about how it goes. Could she say, look, out with the old, in with the new. We need to rethink how we approach this particular thing and the way that our customers, whether they're employees or customers, where is an opportunity to impact emotion the most?
Yeah, for sure. Sometimes people call those moments of truth. Sometimes people use those terminology. So that it's exactly that. You can have, you can bring in your data, kind of looks at, those very high emotion data points, right? It kind of creates an evidence library around all those things that are happening. How many times did that happen? Was it just once that people really doesn't dislike that Dragon Slayer line was for the roller coaster? Dragon Slayer was too long. Now that's it's become so long that it has no good Disney model to make you enjoy their line. We need to work through that, if you will. So she in her case, Journey Track can give you that data and really elevate it so that, hey, these are areas where there's some pain points that are pretty intense, and you need to do something radical to shift that. So to shift that, and something that's now you need to give everybody who takes longer than 5 minutes in that line an ice cream at the end. So there you go.
Yeah. And how does it help someone who's like Mark Cuban when you have the results from the Journey Track tool?
So we have this whole journey impact stuff built in. So now, bringing in metrics, we actually now have we're able to bring in metrics through Snowflake. So those that are in Snowflake and Databricks and, BigQuery is next. But now for Snowflake, you're able to bring in all those operational metrics, tie them to those CX data points, get timelines, and use that to show ROI. And that's what he cares about.
And as do a lot of people in that C-suite.
Yeah. You always need to have a Cuban mindset, period.
Yeah.
And I'm going to make you guys laugh. My parents are Cuban, so I was doing this at a conference, and every time I said, you need a Cuban, I'm like, you need an Ania. There you go. I think it's interesting to see it. I think people get so stuck in trying to isolate, and there's just, even then, even the folks who've been doing this for so long, look at marketing attribution for years. It's so hard to get that sort of right. there's this like playbook of like, let's get the ROI right. And honestly, for now, the first thing people need to start thinking about, and that's why we built the journey impact feature, which is at least showing like, here's maybe a financial metric, and then here is my like whatever sales of the riders on this Dragon Slayer ride, and then versus like how happy they are at the end, so that we can see. And then obviously if you worked at the kinks of the lines and you gave them ice cream for free if they took more than 5 minutes, your NPS is probably going to go up, your revenue is going to go down because now you're giving free ice creams, and maybe there's more people riding it. So the net is that, and you're able to do it now more efficiently, so you have greater sales. These fixes netted out to a better experience and more revenue, and win-win.
And lastly, how do you see Taylor Swift using the results from the journey tracking tool to tell stories better?
Yeah, this is where, like, if you think there's the whole concept of maps to maps or journey atlas, some people call it that. It's like being able to see the bigger story and then be able to drill into all the different reasons and things that are like creating whatever, like, and having that bird eye view, but also being able to tell those micro stories and anything that's uniquely theirs. Like, hey, we had the ice cream at the end of the ride. Sort of, there's something that's uniquely theirs, and it gives them that freedom to do so and tell a story.
Yeah, wonderful. So looking at the advantages of using a tool like Journey Track, you mentioned AI. How do you see AI being incorporated into journey management in the tool to help the CX leader and help businesses? It
is really interesting, the things that we're able to already built in. So I came from a world where we used to take weeks, months to create these journey maps, because just synthesizing, if we were doing data-based journeys, you would go around whatever X number of countries, research this and that, maybe do some co-creation, net, and now AI synthesizing all that data is literally the easiest thing. You can also, like, honestly, persona building, personas now, we can either create proto-personas on the fly with AI. Like, think about a typical persona engagement to understand who your personas are. You have a bunch of data, it's behavioral data from like web analytics. You have, qualitative interviews, quantitative data. You want to either, feed it into our system, say, hey, I want you to spit out, like the major, like X number, whatever you think is the right number of personas based on all this data. Or you can say, well, I know that there's like these 5 sort of, breakdowns based on our segmentation models that I want to make sure I stay strict to. And so break it down by these segmentation sort of requirements. Quite frankly, that work there is typically on a consulting engagement, $80,000, $90,000 engagement, now is done literally like in seconds, which is crazy, right? Either research or research and behavioral persona creation, and at least the initial tap, right? Like initial kind of saying, going back to evidence and saying, this is where we got this, right? There's granted, there's layering that happens after, that's the first, version 1. But that step, that is something so that's amazing. So that's those types of things. And then there's stuff like synthesizing and creating tags and creating. Obviously, we can also create journeys from raw data as well. You have a bunch of research data, call center data. Using AI, we can create some initial journeys for you using that data. Again, something that used to take forever. And some of our customers are asking us to create some dashboards, and we've been working through it. But there's actually, with AI, you just can prompt all the data you have. Why do you even you can custom the days where you were like, let's create a dashboard to figure things out, and everybody had to try to customize it. Like, you can move away from that. I can just drill into my own data, show me this by this, and bam, there it is.
Thing of beauty, the world that we're in now is so changing so quickly, and yet it's still critical to be able to traverse the landscape of our key stakeholders and influence them, because they have oftentimes competing priorities.
Yeah, it goes back to how we started this conversation. Technology is going super fast. People are not adapting to that speed. And that's why, to me, buy-in is inevitable, alignment is obvious. I think now the thing that our generation and future generations have to really think about is it's more the, how do we align our people? How do we best support sort of this big technology boom that's happening? It's honestly from, like, I think it's so easy now to create features in a way that used to take months and months and months to do. Even with like all the development tools, we can turn around code in days. And that's crazy, right? So it's an interesting time for sure. But to me, it's back to human skills, right? It's about how do you engage your leaders? How do you help the entity move forward? Those are the real skills that I think are still very much in demand, and very much what is going to create the right environment for you to really succeed in general. I mean, every week it's just amazing what the team is doing quickly, and I'm just like, wow, these are dream things that I always used to dream up with, that were so painful to do, that it can now be done quickly. But yeah, I don't know. It's people, and it goes back to basic human. That's why I think you're, not to hoot your horn, but I think you have an amazing training that I think is so, like, from the moment you mention, I'm like, that's exactly what a lot of our customers need right now. More than anything else, they need to understand how to really break away from your earlier points, break away from that hero journey, right? To just kind of think that they own it and the like. That's where it's all at.
Yeah. Well said. Well said. Well, it's been so much fun, as it always is, and I want to end with a question. What delights you as a customer?
I'm about little moments, right? So I think I did answer this. I'm about those little key moments, right? So I get delighted when you do little things like, I don't know, let's see, do I have it here? Like, my husband will bring me little things, like small little things, and he doesn't even bring me something expensive. Like, I love when you very much do something, a small token of appreciation. So little details, it's what I think grabs me.
Yeah. I had someone on a show recently, and they said, somebody hand wrote a thank you letter. And it had been so long since I ever got a handwritten letter. It was just, it felt so special. And it wasn't $1 million. It didn't cost them, but it made a huge difference.
Yeah. It's interesting, this little things. It's just like we take things for granted. And I try to thank people when they do nice things as they do it, right? Sometimes it's just like calling them and saying, hey, I wanted to say that was super special what you did. And I think those are I guess it goes down to little moments. I'm very much a little moments person. So.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's not just you. I think those things that you can do to make an impact in people's lives, both personally and professionally, I don't think they have to be these huge, grandiose things. I think they can be small things. And after all, we all want to be seen, heard, validated, felt like we belong. And that doesn't necessarily cost a lot of money or take a lot of time. Well said.
Well said. Good stuff.
Ania, thank you so much for being a return guest and on the show, and sharing so much. I love when we talk about celebrities, and you help bring it to life.
Thank you for having me make up that fun scenario. I wasn't expecting that one, Mark's Playground. I'll make a little picture for you and send it to your way of what that little Mark's Playground has.
We may be onto something.
Yeah, there you go. Let's do it. Well, thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much.
You too. Thanks.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Delighted Customers podcast. It would mean so much if you would take a moment to subscribe. You can go to Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, or wherever you listen to podcasts, click on the plus sign or follow button, and that will ensure that you don't miss an episode, and it helps get the word out to others. While you're there, I'd love it if you'd leave a 5-star review. I look forward to seeing you back here next Thursday.